Laura decided that she wanted to devote her life to science when she was still in high school. She understood that her mother didn't have the money to pay for college, so she did everything she could to get a scholarship. Laura's mother wasn't happy that her daughter wanted to leave for a big city thousands of kilometers away. Even though Laura was very smart, she was also very naive. This timid young woman would be alone in a huge city where the rules of life are completely different, and there would be no one around to protect her. But, having listened to her daughter's arguments, the woman agreed to let her go. Laura's hard work paid off, and she did get the scholarship. This story is about the fact that the path to true happiness can often be thorny, but the one who gets through it gets to feel the happiness of success with every cell of their body. The big city met the young woman from a small town with its usual crowds of people and countless cars, loud noises, and smog. Laura had never been to such a big city before. Everything around her amazed the young woman and even had her slightly confused. Nevertheless, Laura gathered her thoughts and was determined to move forward with her plan. Alex was Laura's dorm roommate. She was the complete opposite of Laura, but the young women still became very good friends. Laura took her studies very seriously and spent all her free time at the library, for which she was praised by her teachers, but mocked by the other students. They called the young woman a nerd and a simpleton and made fun of her all the time. At such moments, Alex, who wasn't timid at all, always came to her friend's defense. Every evening, the young woman shared the news, telling each other every detail of their day. "Laura, is it just me, or do you have feelings for Professor Stanley?" Alex once asked. "What? Where did you get that from?" Laura was surprised, but her face turned crimson. Alex looked at her friend and shook her head. "Apparently I hit the mark. You probably don't realize it, but you talk about him all the time. In the 3 years that we've been here, you've never spoke of anyone so enthusiastically." "Come on, he's just a really great teacher. He's the smartest person I know, and I really like learning from him," Laura continued, still feeling embarrassed. "The more I listen to you, the more convinced I am that you fell for him. Can you tell me how old he is?" "Alex, stop it. I didn't fall for anyone. And I don't know such details about him, but he looks about 45 years old." "Darling, knowing how naive you can be, I just have to ask you to please be careful. Men at his age are often drawn to young women, but the problem is that they usually see it as nothing but a fling. I don't want you to have your heart broken." She never took her eyes off him, listening to his every word. When he turned his gaze to her, she trembled, and any accidental touch made her go weak in the knees. Laura was very much in love with her professor. One day, he asked her to stay behind after the lecture. "Laura, I'm very happy with your progress in my class. I see how hard you're trying, so I'd like to invite you to join my team. An experimental laboratory is being opened at the faculty, and I'm looking for people who are ready to devote their lives to science." "With great pleasure. Thank you for your trust." Laura was beyond happy. Now, Professor Stanley's laboratory had become her second home. But Professor Stanley's proposals didn't end there. One day, he offered to give her a lift. Then there were trips to a museum and an exhibition. Professor Stanley admired her craving for science, saying that they had a lot in common, which couldn't be said about his ex-wife. "She didn't understand me at all, and then she simply left me. Moreover, she turned her son against me, and now he doesn't even talk to me." "You will definitely meet a woman who will be on the same wavelength as you," Laura reassured him, imagining herself in this role. The young woman was on cloud 9, but Alex didn't share her enthusiasm at all. "Laura, he's not as simple as it seems. I made inquiries about him. You're far from the first student he'd had a relationship with, and I'm sure you won't be the last one either," her friend warned Laura. "Alex, don't tell me what to do or whom to date. I'm capable of making my own decisions." Laura didn't want to listen to anything Alex had to say. One evening, when Laura and the professor were alone in the laboratory, he suddenly came up close to her and gave her a hug. No one had even spoken to her the way he did. Of course, Laura's heart melted. She couldn't and didn't want to resist him. After that, they started seeing each other regularly. He rented out a hotel room where they spent their nights. Other students whispered behind their backs, discussing the relationship between the student and the professor. But Laura didn't care. She was happy, and, like a naive child, she was waiting for the logical continuation of their relationship. But the professor seemed to be in no hurry. So one day, Laura decided to talk to him about it. "When can we be together?" the young woman asked. "Honey, we already are together," he replied. "I'm talking about living together, you get it. And when will we get married?" "Baby, I've been married twice already and I've had enough of that. I don't want to go there again. Actually, I've always been in favor of open relationships. As long as we're good together, why should we complicate things?" "Twice? You only told me about one of your marriages. As long as we're good together? So am I just a temporary entertainment for you?" Laura felt as if she'd been doused with icy water. "Why does it matter how many wives I've had, and why entertainment? I would call our relationship more of a consolation." Everything changed after that night. The professor stopped inviting Laura to dinners. He didn't offer her rides or to spend the evening together. And soon, Laura got the confirmation that she was far from the last student to fall for his charm. 2 weeks later, she saw another young woman, a freshman, getting into his car. Laura was sitting on a park bench, lost in her thoughts. She felt how all her feelings for the professor, love, tenderness, admiration, changed into disgust. Suddenly, she heard someone scream right beside her. "Young lady, can you hear me? Wake up!" Laura turned around and saw a young man holding her bag, but she didn't understand what was happening. "Your bag was almost stolen just now and you didn't even notice. Here, take it." The young man held out Laura's bag and sat down next to her. "I was lost in my thoughts. Thank you very much," the young woman answered, still somewhat confused. The young man's name was Brandon, and he was a little older than Laura. He graduated from the university 3 years ago and was working for a promising company. A lively conversation started between the young people, which distracted Laura from her sad thoughts. The young man walked her home and asked for her phone number. During the next couple of weeks, Laura plunged headlong into her studies. Sometimes Brandon called and pulled her out to go see some exhibition or just take a walk in the park. The young woman noted how easy and comfortable she felt around him. This feeling of freedom couldn't even be compared with the feeling she experienced with Professor Stanley. The young woman felt that her life was getting better, but what happened next simply shocked her. Laura found out she was pregnant. She was completely lost, not knowing what to do next. Brandon noticed Laura's pensive mood and asked her what happened. Laura wasn't sure whether to burden him with her problems, but she needed to share with someone, so she told Brandon everything. "Listen, I understand that we haven't been dating for a long time, but I liked you at first sight. Your pregnancy doesn't scare me, so if you don't mind, I'd like to be there for you. I promise to do everything I can to help you." Laura looked at Brandon and thought about how great it would have been if she had met him earlier in her life. One day, Brandon asked Laura to meet him and said he wanted to talk. They sat on the same bench where they first met. "Laura, I grew up without a father. He left us when I was little to be with his numerous mistresses. He never cared about me. I still haven't forgiven him for it, and I don't even talk to him, although he lives in the city and, by the way, teaches at your university. I know how hard it was for my mother to raise me alone, and I don't want you to go through it. So I thought about it, and I'd like to ask if you would marry me and move in with us. I'll go to work, you can continue your education, and my mother will be happy to babysit her grandson or granddaughter." As soon as Brandon said the last word, Laura suddenly heard a male voice that seemed very familiar. "Brandon, son." The young people turned around. Seeing the approaching man, Laura felt sick to her stomach. It was him, Professor Stanley, and, as it turned out, he was Brandon's father. Brandon wasn't the least bit happy to see his father. It just so happened that the professor couldn't see Laura behind Brandon. "Are you going to introduce me to your girlfriend?" When the professor saw Laura, he froze in place. At that moment, Laura jumped up from the bench, grabbed her purse, and ran as fast as she could. Brandon wanted to run after her, but her father stopped him. "What do you want from me? I've said it multiple times. I don't want to have anything to do with you." When Brandon turned around to catch up with Laura, she was already gone. Brandon couldn't find Laura anywhere the next day, week, and even month. She never answered her phone, and seemed to have disappeared off the face of the earth. Meanwhile, Alex told Brandon that Laura's things were gone too. Brandon decided that he scared Laura away with his proposal, and that she probably didn't love him, and thus didn't want to spend the rest of her life with him. Therefore, no matter how painful it was, the young man decided to not bother her anymore. Years passed. Life went on. But not a day went by that Brandon didn't think about Laura. One day, as he was getting home from work, Brandon saw his father at his door. He could see from his mother's face that she was very upset. "Mom, please let us talk in private." "Will you ever leave us alone?" Brandon asked his father coldly. "Son, the thing is, I have some problems and I need your help." "What do you need?" "A lot has changed recently. There was a change of management at the university. No one's looking at the person's merits anymore. These young fools are now allowed to run the dean's office, complaining about everything." So that's what's happened. Some young woman you deceived finally had the good sense to complain about you? "It's not funny. I gave so many years of my life to this university, and instead of gratitude, they threw me out into the street, like some old furniture," the professor complained to his son. Brandon rejoiced. His father finally got what he deserved. "What do you want from us?" he asked his father again. "I wanted to ask you to help me out with some money. I need to reboot, to take a rest." "What? Are you serious? You want us to give you money for a vacation? You old leech, get out of here." "Oh, so that's how you want to play it?" The professor's face was distorted. It looked like he was literally going to burst from anger. "And how's Laura doing? Didn't you propose to her back then at the park?" Brandon was confused. He never got the chance to introduce her to his father. She was a good one, gave up faster than all the others. Even though she came from some small town, she was hot in bed. Brandon didn't even have time to think before his fist flew into his father's face. He finally understood everything. "Laura was pregnant with my father's baby. When she saw him at the park and realized that I was his son, she ran away. She had no other choice. I have to find her. I still love her, and I don't care who the father of her child is. I will love him as my own. Sure, she could be married by now, but I have to at least try." Brandon managed to find out where Laura came from. On his way over, the young man went over all the things he could say to Laura when he saw her. Approaching the house, Brandon saw a 5-year-old boy playing in the yard. "Hi," Brandon said and extended his hand. The boy shook his hand. "Can you tell me if Laura lives here?" "My mother's name is Laura, and who are you?" "My name is Brandon. I'm an old friend of your mother." "Michael," Brandon heard a familiar voice. And then she came out of the house. "I'm here," the boy said. Seeing Brandon, the woman froze in place. "I finally found you. I'm sorry it took me so long. I only recently realized why you ran away that day. I know who Michael's father is." Laura never took her eyes off Brandon. Every cell in her body was trembling. He took a step towards her, and she threw herself into his arms. "Remember that thing I proposed that day at the park? The offer still stands." Tears welled up in Laura's eyes. "Mommy, what is he saying?" the boy asked. "I'm saying that I really want to be your dad. If you don't mind, of course." The boy looked at his mother in surprise. She smiled and nodded in response. "Let's try it and see what happens," the boy replied in a businesslike manner, which made them all laugh.